Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. We're up for an Emmy tonight. Isn't it just an honor to be nominated?
Tony Kornheiser, yeah, if you're a loser. We've got 3 Emmys. I got 3 in different bathrooms holding rolls of toilet paper, and I got 4 bathrooms in my house. So I need another one to complete the full set. How about you?
Well, yeah, I got something I believe in my house called a mantle. It's not going in the bathrooms, I can tell you that. Not Mickey either.
A mantle is a show-off thing. People come to your house and showing off.
That's right. That's right.
That's not show-off. Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, the Lakers are in a tough spot. Carmelo Anthony officially retires, and Brooks Koepka wins the PGA Championship. But we begin today with the Celtics losing again last night to the Heat. This one was in Miami, and this one was a rout. The Celtics trailed by 30 points after 3 quarters. Boston is now down 3-0 in games. Wilbon, are you more interested in the Heat's success or the Celtics' collapse?
Tony, I guess in the short term, we're still 24 hours, less than that, out from the Celtics' collapse. And I guess maybe I'm more fascinated with that. I woke up and I thought one thing, and I'm thinking, wow, the Heat, and they get all these undrafted players, and they have non-stars except for Jimmy Butler, and to some point, Kyle Lowry, who's, wearing the championship ring, and Bam Adebayo, who's been good for a long time. But I got time for them because they're going to be around. They're going to be in something called the NBA Finals. What I'm more interested in right now in the short term is the Celtic collapse, a complete and utter collapse. And, there's lots of talk about, well, who's to blame? A lot of people, the stars, the coach. I don't know that I really want to put any on the front office, except maybe if they selected the wrong coach in the short term because of what happened with Ime Udoka, over the summer, and losing a coach in which you thought, okay, this is going to be their guy, and he can't be. Wow. I mean, there's just so much. Last night, Joe Mazzulla said, there's a disconnect. He admitted when asked under a lot of questioning, yeah, there's a disconnect. And when asked, what is it? He said, I don't know. There is. I mean, there's a big disconnect between him and his players, Tony, and there could be a lot bigger things coming for the Celtics because I don't see them winning. They look like they went for Magic Johnson to say, and Magic, the only organization Magic respects more than the Celtics are his Lakers. For him to say they quit, I believe Magic 100%, and I talked to other players in real time, Hall of Famers, who believe they quit too. That's wow. That's a story.
Yeah, I mean, I always look at these questions from the eyes of somebody who writes a sports column. And the immediate sports column is the Celtics. There's no question about that. Many people have said what you're saying, that, the coach is to blame here. And it's possible that's true. It's possible that, this is too big a stage for him. He's in his first year, but it didn't look that way in the regular season at all. And I think back to, Philadelphia blaming Doc Rivers when they lost to Boston. And many people, including you, defended Doc Rivers. And what people said was, well, James Harden quit. And Joel Embiid, it seems obvious to me, is not great when the light is bright so far. So I'm trying to think about this in terms of the Celtics. And to me, Mike, it's possible that the way they beat Philadelphia by winning Game 6 and Game 7 just took everything out of them. Maybe they wanted to beat Philadelphia more than any other team in the playoff because of that proximity and that rivalry. Maybe they don't think of Miami in quite the same way. And maybe 51 points for Jason Tatum was all he had because he hasn't been good in this series. And Jaylen Brown, 2 for 20 from 3. So I'm trying to say that maybe the coaching thing is a little bit overstated and it falls on players more than coaches. We move now to the Lakers, who are themselves down 3-0. They play tonight against Denver, a team that honestly has looked decisively better in this series. Wilbon, you're physically in Los Angeles. Do you expect the Lakers to win tonight and stay alive in this series?
No, Tony, I don't. Because I think you get to a point in a series where both teams know who the better team is. And that's when that series ends. And I think we're at that point. We were not at that point coming into Game 3 because the Lakers hadn't lost at home. No team had lost at home. But we got there, and, Tony, I'm looking at this, and, yes, Jamal Murray had a great first half, and players like the Joker wasn't even at the game until the fourth quarter. It is not like Denver played so well in Game 3 here in Los Angeles that you look at this and say, oh, the Lakers have got so much room here and they can blitz them at least one game and take this back to. No, I don't see that. Here's something else, Tony, historically. And so many of these historical things, the Lakers have been down 3-0 8 times in franchise history. They've been swept all 8 times.
Let me just say this, that the record of teams that are down 3-0 historically is 0-149. That's not a small sample size. I want to go larger picture here for a second. It's possible these 2 series are over by tomorrow night.
Yeah.
It's possible teams get swept. The NBA Finals is not allegedly going to start until June 1st. That would be June 9 days away. That's bad business. It's bad business for the NBA. It's bad business for ABC and ESPN because you have teams in there in Denver and Miami that will attract hardcore basketball fans, but not casual fans in the way that the Lakers and the Celtics would. So if I run the league, I go to ESPN and I say, let's move this up. Let's start early. Let's be flexible. I don't know. Just be flexible. If you wait 9 days, your audience is non-existent and it's bad business. They shouldn't do it. They shouldn't do it if they're sweeps.
Let's move to golf, where Brooks Koepka won this weekend's PGA Championship at Oak Hill. Koepka beat Victor Hovland and Scottie Scheffler by 2 strokes for his 3rd PGA trophy and 5th major overall. Tony, where does this place Koepka among today's top players, and what does it mean for him historically?
So he's got 5. That's more than anybody on tour who's under the age of 50 or who is 47 and just had an operation and is unlikely to ever play again. We're talking about Phil and Tiger. He's ahead of everybody else in his relative age peer group, and he won this tournament. I understand that the tournament was lost on Saturday when Corey Connors and on Sunday when Victor Hovland, in the same bunker at 16, hit into the grass face and had to take doubles. But Koepka never relinquished the lead on Sunday, was commanding on Sunday, earned the tournament on Sunday. I mean, this is not the performance of Augusta, where he failed. He went out and he won. Mike, he's just 33 years old, so maybe he can win some more. He's one of 20 people all time to have 5 majors or more, and it's very odd in this respect, Mike. He only has 4 regular weekly tournament wins. He's got more majors than anything else, and he's got 4 seconds in majors. What that says to me is that he is at his best when the lights are the brightest, and in that regard, he is golf's answer to me to Jimmy Butler. That's who I like in him.
Interesting comparison, Tony, and it seems like he admits this. He cares more about that. He says he choked at Augusta. He says that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, the list that you mentioned about today's peers. So he's got 5, Rory's got 4, Spieth has 3, Morikawa, Rahm, Justin Thomas, Dustin Johnson have 2. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody. Scheffler, who's just getting started, has 1 and seems to be a threat at every major. So he seems like he's going to pop up in there. Tony, it puts him in a place where, and only 20 people have 5 or more. He's in an all-timer situation already, and you mentioned the age of 33. And what I like about this particularly, because I'm tired of the storyline, is it puts on the back burner the live. The guys go to live and they can't play. Shut up. Just shut up with that.
I'm going to tell you this.
Done.
Here's where you and I disagree on this, because I think this is a very important victory in the history of golf. I will tell you the most important football game ever played, not the best, not the most memorable, the most important football game ever played was when the Jets won Super Bowl III, because it validated the merger. It told people at the AFL and the NFL they're equal. And from that point on, the NFL took off like a rocket ship. What this victory does, the victory by Brooks Koepka, is it says to golf, you got to let everybody in. Anybody on the sortie tour, you got to let them in all the majors. You got to let them into the PGA.
They're all in already.
I know, and the Ryder Cup, rather. No, but you got to, in continuum, you have to do this. You may hate the Saudi tour. You may hate the money. You may not want to watch it on TV. You cannot shut these guys out. You cannot. They got to be there. They're
winning.
legit. They got to be there.
All
right, let's get us out of here. Give me some prompter here and I'll get us out. Let's take a break. Coming up, have the Panthers and Golden Knights built insurmountable leads in their Stanley Cup Series?
Yeah, like Miami. Thoughts on the career of Carmelo Anthony?
You like the analogy to Jimmy Butler, right? Because he's a big-time playoff player.
Koepka doesn't seem to really be jazzed by what happened.
It's mail time when we find out what's on the minds of the minions. Let me see what's first.
Mail time!
Here we go. Whose 2-0 series lead feels more formidable, the Panthers or the Golden Knights?
Well, Tony, the Panthers, for the same reason that the Celtics, 2-0 deficit, so Miami's 2-0 lead feels and felt more formidable because you win on the road. When you start going up 2-0 on the road, you haven't even played at home yet. And I know all these games in the conference final round have been decided in overtime, and they've been thrillers. But, Florida's on a roll anyway. They've won something like 9 out of 10 games in these playoffs. They've been fabulous. And when you win 2 on the road like that, they got to feel pretty invincible. I know it comes a year after they were the President's Trophy team, but it seems like it's coming at the right time for them.
It's definitely Florida. Vegas is a #1 seed. Florida is an 8 seed. They don't have a 9 seed. They are, in fact, 9-1 in their last 10 playoff games. Their best run during the regular season in a 10-game package is 7-2-1. They've taken out Boston, the #1, greatest regular season of all time. They've taken out Toronto, everybody's darling, Toronto. They're in the process of taking out Carolina, which is a 2 seed. I think they had the second most points in the entire NHL. I mean, what they're doing is amazing. Mike, they're 6-0 in overtime games.
Yeah, the overtime.
It's
and there's
Florida.
luck that's involved in
Florida.
that, too.
To me, you look at this, all credit to Vegas. And by the way, as you say, they're all overtime games. So it's hard to separate the teams from each other. But what Florida has done over the course of the playoffs is remarkable.
And they've got Matthew Tkachuk, who's just a wonder, and particularly what he's done in overtime specifically and just great overall.
Carmelo Anthony announced his retirement from the NBA after 19 seasons. How will you remember his career?
Well, Tony, Carmelo Anthony is way up in the ladder of all-time scorers in the NBA. And a Denver franchise, which hadn't made the playoffs in 8 or 9 years when he got there, he made them relevant again. He was a terrific Olympic player, terrific. He was pretty good for the Knicks, who haven't been worth a damn in a long time until now. And Carmelo Anthony played in some places, and without truly great players. He and Chauncey Billups had a nice little partnership in Denver. And he was the Rookie of the Year when guys like you wanted to force the narrative and give LeBron James a Lifetime Achievement Award. I voted for Carmelo Anthony, who was a rookie, got his team to the playoffs in the much tougher Western. Did not sit out. I know he didn't win. I get that. But he was a terrific player and a pro. And, it's 19 years, man. It's a long time to be of service in any professional sport. Hall of Famer Carmelo Anthony.
Yeah. I remember when you picked him over LeBron for Rookie of the Year.
Gladly.
I thought it was insane then. I think it's even more insane
do it again.
Now. What I remember first and foremost about Carmelo Anthony is as a freshman taking Syracuse to the NCAA title.
That's right.
I think he was a very fine pro, perhaps a little bit overrated because he never got to the finals. Got to one conference final, I believe, in Denver and none in New York. But I will say this as a native New Yorker. I will also remember the incredible excitement around Madison Square Garden when the Knicks traded for him. He put his picture up all over the city, and they did this wonderful thing with the letters NY at the end of Anthony. They circled them and put them in blue and orange, which are the Knicks colors. And I always thought that that was a terrific thing. I should point out that one of the draft picks that Denver got for Carmelo turned out to be Jamal Murray, who may well win the title that Carmelo could never win. Enough email. Yeah. Let's take one last break, but still to come. Bob Baffert gets back to the winner's circle at the Preakness. And
Brianna Stewart or Brittany Griner have the more outstanding performance during the WNBA's opening weekend. Carmelo won at Syracuse. It's the Basketball Hall of Fame, boys and girls. It all counts. Carmelo won a championship as a freshman in college.
There is no chance that he's not in the Hall of Fame. No, there's
Great
no chance.
Olympian. Great Olympic player. Hall of Fame.
Happy time, people. Happy 21st birthday, Anthony Richardson. The recent Florida quarterback was the talk of the combine. Richardson showed freakish athletic abilities, jumped way up on draft boards. He was the third quarterback taken behind Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, and the fourth overall pick. Richardson is now an Indianapolis Colt, and the organization is hoping he can stop the recent trend of one-and-done veteran quarterbacks like Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, and Matt Ryan, who either retired, were traded, or released in the last 3 years. Richardson's upside is how fast and strong he is. His downside is his rather mediocre numbers at Florida last year. 53.8 completion percentage, 17 touchdowns, 9 interceptions.
Oh, I can think of a lot of quarterbacks who would take 17 and 9. You know, almost a 2-to-1 ratio. I do, Tony. Look, he's got some improving to do, but that's what they hire these coaches and pay him all this money now. Player development. Let's go now.
Happy anniversary, Larry Bird and Dominique Wilkins. On this day 35 years ago, these two Hall of Fame-bound players locked up in an epic Game 7 of the Eastern Conference semifinals. Wilkins could never, ever get the best of Bird, but he sure tried. Wilkins made 19 of 33 shots. He scored 47 points. But Bird saved it all for the fourth quarter, the money quarter. Bird made 9 of 10 shots in the fourth, scored 20 of his 34 points when they counted the most. Of course, the greatest rival to Bird was Magic Johnson. Magic was the main course, Wilkins the appetizer. Wilkins is proof that if you don't get to the finals, your brilliance is easy to stick in a corner.
Tony, you know, you can make some comparisons between Carmelo Anthony and Dominique Wilkins. They're both way up, I believe, 9th and 15th, respectively, with Carmelo having passed Dominique. Great, great, great players, even though, as you mentioned, neither got to the finals. You pay your money down and go watch either one of them. I know I would, and I'm betting you would and did.
I did. A melancholy trails to Jim Brown. The first sentence in any review of Jim Brown's life says he was the greatest running back of all time, and arguably, and I would argue for it, the greatest football player of all time. The second sentence says that Brown left football while still in his prime to become a Hollywood actor. The third sentence talks about Brown's outspoken commitment to civil rights for all, his ceaseless work on behalf of equality, and his efforts to get gangs to stop shooting and killing each other. And the fourth sentence talks about the accusations that Brown was physically violent towards women and how this tarnished his reputation and legacy. Brown led a complicated life. There is no smooth path here.
Tony, I'm going to zero in for a second on the part about concentrating on gangs and members and getting them to stop shooting and killing each other. In the aftermath of Rodney King and the riots here in Los Angeles, where I sit now, when the city was burning, Jim Brown summoned to his home in Hollywood, right above the Hollywood sign, members of the Crips and Bloods. And as a reporter for the Washington Post, I called and talked to Jim Brown, and he invited me to this house to the meeting. And Ted Koppel and Nightline, among others, were there. And I went to this thinking, well, there's got to be some armed security there because you got Crips and Bloods, active members of these notorious gangs, and they're coming together on what might happen. Here's what happened. Jim Brown said to them, lay your arms down. You're not bringing them in my house. And he had the kind of authority and just a presence and the aura that they did. They laid them down. And from his house, from the balcony of his house, from the patio, you could see spots where LA was still burning. But at his house that night, there was no incident of anything except Jim Brown saying, we've got to stop this. And so I remember just the end of his playing career, but so much of America Can and Jim Brown being an activist. And I have been in awe and feel blessed to have gotten to know him a little bit.
Growing up on Long Island, I read about him when I was very young. He was the greatest athlete ever, the greatest lacrosse player of all time, as well as the greatest football player. Yeah. And the word that I would use more than anything else is power. I mean, power. He's somebody you would say word. Sir to, and I know you did. Let's go to the big finish. The Orioles swept the Blue Jays. Safe to believe?
No, I know they got the second best record in baseball, just a couple games behind the Rays, but it's way too early for that for me. Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer allowed 1 run over 14 of a doubleheader. Mets sweep the Guardians. Is that significant?
Well, they've won 7 of their last 10, and those two guys can carry a team. They're Hall of Famers. Christopher Morel of the Cubs has 8 home runs in 11 games since being called up. Is that a big deal, Mr. Cub?
It's great we got a few mashers now, but it's also very Cub-like in that we can't win a game after a good start. Bob Baffert's National Treasure won the Preakness. You surprised at that?
A little bit, because Mage was the heavy favorite. Look, I know that Baffert is the lightning rod for that sport. Everything bad that happens gets blamed on Baffert. He's the best trainer ever. I think it's good when he wins Triple Crown races. Last one, WNBA started this weekend. What's the highlight?
I know Brittany Griner had a 27-10 game. It was just incredible to see her back on the court here. But Breanna Stewart had 45 3/4, so if we're going by performance, it might take Stewie.
We're out of time. We'll try and do better the next time. Alan Buba's shout-out, hole-in-one at Grove 23.
I'm Mike Wilbon. Same time tomorrow, Knuckleheads. Check out NBA Countdown tonight at 7:30 Eastern. And now, your SportsCenter.
They're going to put his name on the flag.